Welcome to episode 23 of Living in Infinity. Today, I think Alec has come up with a list of some topics that he got based on Alex Hormozi's content. So I think we're gonna just let him fire away with these questions.
So for anyone that doesn't know Alex Hormozi, he's basically very popular entrepreneur on YouTube or I guess just social media in general. And he has a lot of interesting and he's very outspoken about a lot of his ideas on either living life, like the way he lives his life, and also just the way he runs his businesses and companies. And they're pretty, I think, non-traditional from what a lot of the normal entrepreneur type of content is on social media. And so I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from his stuff, whether you agree with it or not. So we'll kind of go through some of these and see how they apply to our lives. And then I think a lot of people will be able to learn lessons from these as well. Uh, so yeah, the first one, this is a quote directly from him. He says, "You're going to lose sleep. You'll doubt whether it's going to work. You'll stress to make ends meet. You won't finish your to-do list. You'll wonder whether you made the right call, and you have no way of knowing for years. This is what hard feels like, and that's okay." Uh, this is something that I think I relate to a lot just because, or I guess both of us, because we aren't taking the traditional path of working a normal 9 to 5 job, working our way up the corporate ladder. We're kind of doing our own route as far as starting businesses or whatever we want to do on our own. And so I think this is something that is super important to keep in mind because I feel like a lot of times, at least for me, you kind of get caught in this cycle of thinking like, this is hard. I feel lost. And you kind of use those signals as like a way of thinking like, oh, maybe I'm not doing the right thing because this is hard and because I feel lost. But in reality, those are the signals that show you are on the right path because like this is just the way it's supposed to be. Um, and so I think this is something that I mean, do you kind of feel that way with the path that you're taking as far as your writing career?
Um, yeah, certainly when we look back to a year ago, or when I first started the Substack, uh, yeah, I pretty much worried about it all the time. And yeah, it was just super draining. I mean, it was just super draining to be in that mindset. So I definitely agree with this. And I think what he's getting at here too is like, not only is it a sign that you're on the right path, but I think he's insisting that at some point you should probably chill out and just accept where you're at. That those stressors are just part of the process. It's okay. Uh, Um, and just take a breath, relax. And that idea actually ties into a super ancient practice that is found within the Judeo-Christian tradition, which is just the Sabbath, or for them it's Saturday, but for us it's Sunday. Just dedicating a day to be content with your work. You don't do any more. You don't worry about what you could have done, what you need to do. You just take a day to relax. Uh, I mean, it's since you worship God, but for our purposes, you can just say relax and accept where you're at and not worry. Because what that does is it allows you that time to recover, to give your mind and your body a break. And so, yeah, I totally agree with what he's saying here. It's a good sign. It means you're pushing yourself, and also just take that breath for sure.
Yeah. I think, I mean, if you want to accomplish things that are out of the normal path, then you're gonna have to do a lot of things that aren't normal and those things aren't going to be easy. And so I think the biggest part of it is just shifting your mindset of how you view the situation that you're in. Like it's one thing he mentioned that I really liked is you have to kind of shift it from like thinking like, oh, this is hard to nobody else is going to do this. And that should be your motivating factor, knowing that you're going through the really hard shit that no one else is going to want to try, or they're going to get to that point where you think that it's hard. And then that's the point that they're going to give up. Uh, and using that, I think, is like a really powerful motivator, because then you kind of stop feeling bad for yourself and you view it as just like, this is just the stage of life that I'm in at the moment where things are going to be tough. Things are very uncertain, but like that just means that, like I said before, you're on the right path, and you're going to be able to accomplish things that nobody else is going to, because no one else wants to put themselves through that situation. Um, I think that's the biggest part of entrepreneurship, is that it's basically all uncertainty. You never know. You never know when the success will come, if it ever will, with that business idea. Maybe you have to switch to something else 4 or 5 years from now. Um, like there's no way of knowing, but this is just part of, you know, taking your own path, as opposed to a normal job or working your way up the corporate ladder. Uh, and I think like the quote said, you'll wonder whether you made the right call and you have no way to know for years. That's scary to think about, like we've kind of decided to go down this path. And I think both of us are like super certain that this is what we want to do for, the rest of our lives, career wise. We could be super successful 2 years from now. We could be super successful 10 years from now. We have no way of knowing. And I guess the whole point of it is you just have to stick to the path that you're on, and know that, the more you continue on this path, the closer you are getting to that outcome that you want. But you literally have no idea of when it's going to come.
Yeah. Yeah, I just think you have to undertake the process, from a from a stance of, like, good faith. Like, you just have to do what you can do, as the challenges arise, you handle them the best you can,
Hmm.
knowing you're gonna do some things well and some other things not so well, and however that works out, it's gonna work out. That's just, the adventure, though. That's what makes
Hmm.
life fun, that's what you read about in books and watching movies. You don't hear stories of people who just put themselves in positions where they know with certainty what's going to happen next. And
Yeah.
it's not an accurate reflection of reality for most people throughout history. It's more just this constant state of uncertainty and just being like, we're going to keep going. We're going to,
Hmm.
we're going to see where this goes, and whatever happens, happens. So I think, yeah, and I think that's, uh, just a way more engaging, exciting way to live, uh, compared to what,
Hmm.
more modern Americans do, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, being successful at anything, whether it's business or writing or art, literally anything, it's just a matter of repetition. And it kind of goes to that quote, like, people aren't lucky, they just create their own luck. Um,
Mm.
a lot of what business is being in the right place at the right time with the right idea, the right business idea. And the only way that you can do that, like, sure, there are maybe some very rare cases where like someone starts their very first business at just the perfect time and that happens to go well for them. I'm sure that happens, but for majority of people, that's not the case. And so a lot of these success stories that you see, no, I think it's very easy for people to be like, oh, they got lucky, and they did. But part of that is just continuously trying new ideas and new businesses. And eventually you're going to be at the right place at the right time with the right idea.
Well, too, over that time, you're going to accrue knowledge and wisdom, and then you're going to be able to better employ it and take advantage of those situations. Like, something I've been kind of thinking on lately is, each time I post a Substack, I'm like, there's a part of me that's like, oh, I hope it blows up. But
Mhm.
I don't really allow myself to think that anymore, or at least I try not to, and rather my view on this current situation that I'm in is just where I have a really small audience. Is I just look at it as an opportunity to have this kind of low risk platform where I can further accrue my knowledge, hone my writing
Mhm.
skills. It's low consequence. It's low stress. And so there's a lot of freedom in that and a lot of room to grow. And so it's,
Yeah.
yeah, I've just become more content.
And I think a good distinction there, though, at least the way I see it, um, is while you are in those early stages, don't use that as like an excuse to be lazy or put things off and not try and do the absolute best. Like this podcast, for example, like our audience is tiny, but we do this for fun. Like we never really started this with the mindset of like, oh, we want to have the biggest podcast ever. And so it is super low risk while we don't have a ton of people watching, but we shouldn't use that as like an excuse to be like, oh, it's, it's okay if we kind of put out the shitty episode for the week, or, we don't put a lot of planning into the episode or whatever. I think you, c- you have to like practice the things that you're going to want to do when you are successful and you do have the bigger audience. Uh, I
Yeah,
think that's
a
super
hundred
important to
percent,
keep in mind.
a
Hmm.
100%. Like I don't come into these conversations with the mindset that um with anything less than 100% attention, and I don't um post any Substack that isn't carefully thought out and labored
Hmm.
over. So yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying there.
It's the same with business, even if it's like a super low risk business that you're trying to start. Uh, while you don't have the employees that are relying on you, you don't have the customers that you have to attend to every single day. That's not an excuse to not put in the work or not try and make that business or your product, what service, whatever it is, the absolute best that it can be, because that's what's going to get you to that point of where you eventually want to be.
Hmm.
Uh, so
Yeah.
I think that this next quote of his ties into kind of what we're talking about. So I'll just go ahead and throw it in here. But um, expecting it to be easy is what makes it much harder than it ever is. A lot of his quotes, which I love, or a lot of the stuff that he talks about is it's just a matter of like reframing your mindset in the way that you view your current situation or these quote unquote issues that you're going through or hardships. Um, because fact of the matter is, whatever your reality is, that's the situation that you're in. There's not really a way to change that. It's just the things that you have to go through. And so you either let that break you or you change your mindset and view it in a way that can actually motivate you. And so I think this one, expecting it to be easy is what makes it much harder than it ever is. It's just a matter of expectations. You thinking that something is hard, the only reason that you think it's hard is because you thought it wasn't going to feel that way when you're in that moment. So if you expect things to be hard, you know they're going to be hard, you know they're going to be very uncomfortable. It's kind of like a weight off of your shoulders when you do reach that point because you knew it was going to be that way and you know it's the way that it's supposed to be.
Yeah. This is uh, hmm. No, I definitely agree. If you go into something expecting it to be easy and it's not, it's just infinitely harder. So no, he's definitely dead on with this one. Um, and then another thing he said was that like it's just part of it is about accepting your reality. Um, and yeah, I think that's a big part of it too. I think a lot of times we have this urge. I kind of wish we were in a different boat, different person, had different circumstances, but you got to think of it as like where you're at is a unique opportunity. It's your
Mhm.
little slice of the world, and that's pretty cool. Uh,
Mhm.
you have this ability to complete this little part of the story, uh, um, and that's nothing to to take for granted.
And yeah, I think, I mean, the cards that you've been dealt, there's no changing that. I guess to a certain extent, you can change your reality or certain parts of it that you don't like. But if we're applying this to entrepreneurship, it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be difficult. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to feel uncertain. This is this is all part of it. And so these are things that you can't change unless you just give up and take a different path. Um, and so, yeah, having that expectation of knowing that this is the way that things are going to be, it doesn't make it, I would say it makes it easier, but it at least doesn't make it, you are making it more difficult on yourself based on unrealistic expectations of how you thought things were going to go. The
Yeah.
same with like doing work and expecting certain outcomes. Like, oh, if I put out 10 Substacks over the next month or whatever, I want to have this number of followers by that time. Like, it's good to set goals, I think, to some extent, but also you're setting expectations for yourself that could end up in disappointment. Where really what you're doing overriding 10 Substacks in a month is just you're making yourself a lot better, and that's
Yeah.
something that's not as much of a tangible metric, but you at least know like this
I
compiles over time.
Yeah, and I think it's the one that matters.
Hmm.
When I look at the people who I listen to or read, they didn't come across some secret formula that allowed them to produce this content in an easy way. These people, they tend to be 20, 30, years older than me. They've been studying what I've been studying for, an infinitely longer amount of time. Um, and so they're just way more knowledgeable. Uh, they have way more to offer than I do at the current moment. And so, uh, yeah, I just, my particular case, or, I guess you could compare like you to just Elon because it's easy. Like there's a reason they're where they're at. And it's because they went through this
Hmm.
process of developing and growing. Uh, and so, uh, yeah, I don't think the focus should be on the end result. The focus should be just on the grind, the daily process of whatever it is we're doing. Um, and then, like I said, you just have to have faith that that's going to work out for you in some manner. Um, and I don't even think, I don't even think the other way, if you reverse that process, like I don't even think that would work really. But maybe for a slight few, but also it's not fun. Because I think the next point you're going to make is you've achieved what you thought was going to make you happy, and then maybe you're no longer are. Um,
Hmm.
I think just from my own experience, like, yeah, the end isn't uh, where the fruit is. The fruit's just in the doing. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, which that perfectly ties into another quote I have on this list. You've already achieved goals you said would make you happy, which this is something that I relate to so much. Because I've had instances where in the past where I was running a e-commerce business and I knew, okay, if I'd want to set tangible goals, like I want to hit this number of revenue per month, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, you have this feeling when you're setting those goals of like, when I hit this, that's when I'm going to feel like, oh, I did it. Like it's going to make me feel so much happier. And like, I'm going to have this money to spend on things that I want to spend money on. And like, while you do feel happy when you do hit these goals, it's very, very short lived. The hedonic treadmill is a very real thing. Like eventually your reality becomes your normal, your new normal. And then you're going to want whatever the next thing is. And it's just this never ending cycle. And so, like you said, you know, you have to learn to love the process itself and not the outcome that you're striving for, because once you hit that outcome, it's over. You did it. There's no more um path, or there's no more progress that you're trying to strive for, and that's what actually makes you happy. Um is striving towards something, whatever it might be. And one idea that he talks about a lot is like, okay, so if the goal, the outcome isn't what actually is making me happy, it's just the process itself. And these things eventually come to an end. How do I set goals or get on certain paths that are basically like lifelong endeavors? So things that I can start doing, they're going to last forever in a way. And so I have this never ending sense of like feeling progress and the happiness that comes from that progress. Uh, and I don't know if that's, I don't think that's something I've figured out yet in my life. I mean, I guess business could be a never ending endeavor. You can always go bigger, but I mean, I think that's something that I've started to think about a lot. Okay, like what are the things that I would like to have as my, my lifelong goals and endeavors that I can always be working towards and progressing towards.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have two thoughts to address with this. The first is that Saltburn, the movie, is a perfect example uh, of the fact that i- like reaching the top, whatever that top is not enough. Uh,
Mhm.
you won't be satisfied, and in the case of Saltburn, you have this family that's at the very pinnacle of existence. They are the looks like the 1% of the 1%, and they've all gone mad. They're miserable
Mhm.
and they hate themselves and each other. And so, yeah, uh, there's just there's like no thing here on earth that you can achieve or acquire that will ultimately satisfy you. And whether you then answer that with like a religious answer is one thing, but also it seems to be just that continually working towards something is also, in my opinion, not as good of an answer, but it does seem to at least keep you from going mad, like in the case of
Mhm.
Saltburn. And then on the other uh, note, it's funny you mentioned that, like thinking of these lifelong endeavors. I think we both have one in running. I definitely be running as something I can always get better at. Yeah, but then also just another kind of thing I've understood here lately is like uh, just Christianity as an intellectual topic is unbelievably dense and fascinating. And I'm just now realizing like, oh, I can study this for my entire life and never get bored with it, never run out of alleys to explore just because of the amount of content that is contained within the topic. And then in just like infinite number of ways they all relate to one another. You're just like looking at this thing. And it's like an infinite world of intellectual possibility. And it's
Mhm.
so fascinating. So yeah, I totally agree with that. You just need these like things in your life that just fascinate you, motivate you, and can just keep you on this lifelong cycle because it is so cool. The little I can do it is so cool to like have that motivation, but then also be able to look back and be like, just look at your growth and uh, realize that you're becoming like a real person. You can really understand something about the world and know how to engage with it. And it's way cooler than just sitting on your TV or sitting on your couch and watching TV for your whole life, like it and
Mhm.
doing nothing because that's just yeah, such a waste. But anyway,
I think an important part of like setting these lifelong endeavors is like, I think short-term goals, it's good for those to be measurable, whether it's like numerical goals for revenue for your business or things like that. But these long-term goals, I think shouldn't be as like easily measurable. Like if you want lifelong goals, you can say like, I just want to be a better writer. Like I want to become the best writer that I can be. That's something that you can strive towards forever. Like I don't think you're ever going to hit a point where like, oh, this is my peak. Like you're always going to think that you can get better. And the same in business. Like you could just say like, I just want to be the best operator I can be, or the most well-rounded business owner that I can be. These are things that you can strive for forever. And you're never going to hit this point of like, oh, I hit this goal. What's next? I have to set something new now. Like these are just things that we love to do and we're always going to do. And so we can always be on this path of like trying or thinking about ways that we can be better. Um, and so I think those are like, don't just, if you're wanting to do business, for example, and you want to have like these super long-term goals, don't just be like, oh, I want to be worth this X amount of money, or I want my businesses to be worth X amount of money. Cause you may eventually hit those. And then you're going to think, okay, I worked my whole life for this. I did it. Now what? Like,
Yeah.
I think that's also a very scary outcome. And so you could even just set goals like, I just want to be the best person that I can be, whether that's through the skills you have, the relationships you have, whatever that might be. Um, but yeah, overarching point here is just I think it's important to have these like lifelong endeavors that you're striving towards. Running is a great example because I mean, people don't hit their running endurance peak until there's people that are still progressing in their 50s or 60s. Like this is just something that they do forever. Uh, and so I think that's another great example that we can both kind of relate to. Um, let's see. So yeah, we've got another quote here. People want to find their passion, but you don't find it. You create it, and you create it by getting good at something. And to get good at stuff, you start by doing stuff that you suck at. Then you get good. Then you like it. Then people ask you how you found your passion, and the answer is just by starting when you sucked and not giving up. Um, I think finding your passion in life is a lot of things that, or is a big thing that gets overlooked for a lot of people. I think a lot of people go their whole lives without ever finding what their true passion is. Um, and I think we both of us have certain passions in our life. And I think we're very lucky to have like discovered these things at a young age. Um, but the important thing here is like it's not just like you accidentally stumble across it. Like anytime you're starting something new, you're not going to be good at it. And I know for me, I hate doing things that I'm bad at because they're not as fun as like doing things that you feel like you're good at. And a big part of I like running is another tangible example. Like a lot of people hate running. Most people hate running, which I totally understand. And they always think, oh, like I'm just not good at running. Like I can run a half a mile and then I'm gassed. Like everyone goes through this stage of like when you start, you're gonna suck and it's not really gotta be that fun. But once you start seeing the progress and you feel better on your next run and your next run and your next run, then that's when you really discover like, okay, is this a passion or do I still just hate it? And you could still hate it and that's fine. It's not for everybody. But us going through that process initially, I think that's how we discovered our passion for running is like, we knew it was gonna suck to begin with, but we just kept doing it, and then eventually we realized, like, "Oh, this is actually, like, a lot of fun."
Yep. I can still vividly remember my first trail run. It was a mile
Mhm.
and it was so
Yeah.
hard. And I read it way too hard. Like I was just like, oh, I'm a young, fit male. I should like run this relatively fast. And all I did was
Mhm.
run like a 10-minute mile while proceeding to absolutely destroy my knees and ankles. Like it was
Mhm.
so just bad. Uh, but yeah, exactly. You nailed it. Just, you got to stick with it. Um, get good at it. And just that it's in those moments where you understand the beauty of the given activity. Uh, So yeah, like another one for me is photography. Trying to think, like my first pictures were just uh, bad, but then you take that first good one, and it's just so cool, and then you can kind of
Mhm.
compare over time, like what you're doing now compared to the photos you took in the beginning, and you look at the improvements in composition and lighting and editing, and then yeah, then you learn that those nuts and bolts of the activity, and it's just in those where I think the fun is had. So yeah, definitely sticking with whatever you're doing is the move.
Yeah. I think it always starts with some level of like innate interest in whatever that is. Like for me, finding my passion for business started at a very young age. And I don't even really know why, because it's not like I was surrounded by business. It was just something that I found interesting. And when I started doing or like starting businesses of whatever form, like when I say businesses, that's a very loose term. Like when I was 14, 15, these were just like, I was doing like random graphic design services online, like for random people for $3 or even doing it for free just so I could like get better at it. But that's how you discover it. It's just like you have some level of interest in something and you start it. And then from that point, I mean, I didn't have what I would consider a truly like successful, like actual business for 4 or 5 years. And like I spent tons of money on certain businesses that didn't pan out. Like it's just part of the whole process. But you're so interested in it at that point that you just keep going. And like you just know, like eventually I'm gonna hit where I want to hit. Um and so I think a big part for people that want to find what their passion is you just have to explore whatever curiosities that you have. And you may think it's completely pointless, and you know, you're gonna have thoughts like, "Oh, I'm gonna end up not liking it," and you may be right, but the whole part of it is just exploring your interests and being curious about things that you could eventually find a passion for. Um, so you have to just try random shit, to be honest, whatever it is. Like if you think I might be interested in this, like I always hear people say like oh like running, like I could see myself wanting, like I kind of want to run, but also like I don't think I'm gonna end up liking it. Well, do it for a month and then to make that decision. Don't
Yeah,
say you're not gonna like it before even trying it, or don't go try it 2 times and then stop. Like really give something a chance and then make your decision of whether or not, you know, it's something that's for you.
yeah, uh, for sure. And I think too, like people get overwhelmed by, like you said, being bad at something when they first start. But if you dedicate even 2 hours of something a week, but do it every week for 5 years, you're gonna get remarkably good at whatever that is. With that little amount of time. So, and those 5 years go so fast. So in the blink of an eye, you're gonna develop the necessary skills for whatever it is you're doing, and you're gonna look back and be like, "Thank God I did that." On the flip side, if you don't, 5 years down the drain, uh, and do that 2, 3 times, you're 35 instead of 20, and, it's just a snowball into oblivion, really. So, uh,
Yeah.
it's just definitely worth, like, really dedicating yourself to something, or balancing. Like, for me, like, I have probably a few things that I balance, and it's just but I've stuck with all of them enough to develop my skills with them over these past 5 years, and now I have, like, a handful of things, like, that I can go do and do
Hmm.
relatively well. And it's just enriching. It makes your
Hmm.
life more fun and engaging. Like, I wanna go take photos for a day, I can do that. I wanna run, I can do that. I don't live anywhere where I can ski, but if I wanna go ski, you just get this ability where you can just go live life, to a higher degree than you otherwise would.
Mhm. Yeah, you have to try things. I think so many people, they'll it's very easy to get in this comfortable trap of like, okay, you have your job that you do, and then after your job, like that's kind of where your hobbies are when you're done working. And it's very easy to get stuck in the trap of like, I come home, make dinner, and then I just kind of watch TV the rest of the day or whatever it might be that people use to kind of distract themselves. But I think if you do want to live a well-rounded life and like fully experience as much as life has to offer, then yeah, you got to find what your hobbies are. It's good to have hobbies and multiple of them ideally, so you can kind of do certain things on certain days whenever you feel like it.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
outside of, go ahead.
Well, too, just to further expand why you'd want to do that, uh, doing those activities rather than staying on the couch is going to expand your uh, community too, further develop it. You're going to make connections and relationships, and you're going to go have dinner with these people, and you're going to really enhance your social life,
Mhm.
which is just of the utmost importance. I mean, it's something that's really been lost in this modern age. So there's that aspect of it as well.
Yeah. And by kind of going back to like creating your own luck or your own opportunities, the easiest way to do that is just expose yourself to more situations. Like, it's very hard to create luck or opportunity for yourself when you go to work, you come home, and that's really all that you do. Like, you're not opening yourself up to more possibilities, and you can do this in so many ways. I mean, traveling, meeting new people, just socializing on the weekends or whenever you have free time. Uh, I mean, business, for example, like a big part of it is like, okay, what business do I want to work on or what ideas? Like, how do I come up with the right business idea? Well, you aren't just going to come up with a good business idea by sitting there and thinking about it and just being like, oh, I want to come up with a business idea. Like, what ideas do I have? Well, you're going to eventually reach the end of your list of ideas. Like, you have to go out, expose yourself to the world. And this is where like inspiration comes from. I assume it's the same with writing. I mean, if you want to write about new ideas and expand your way of thinking, like you have to expose yourself to as many things as you can, and then ideas that you can write about are going to come from that.
Definitely. A good example of that is just college. So, um, the content we cover in college and the perspective from which we approach it is just so different than how I think. And in the material alone, I would never read it unless I was assigned to do so. And so, in one sense, I view it as a huge waste of time because it prevents me from studying the thing that I want to study. But on the other hand, I find that the two categories what I want to study and that which I don't want to study, I find that they're incredibly complementary of one another. Uh, the reading, postmodern books from a postmodern perspective, uh, just really allows me some useful insight into uh, how I see other works and the world, uh, and I mean, for this probably doesn't apply to much of our audience, but in that is certainly not to say that the postmodern perspective is like overall a good thing. I think it misses the mark in a lot of ways, but still being exposed to it, you kind of learn how to make use of things that aren't obviously useful. You learn to make the best of situations and milk things for all that they're worth and find, because I think this is true for a lot of things in life. Like there's a lot of bad in the world, but within that bad, there's things that are true and things that work. Uh, and so part of life is extracting those things and making whatever it is you're building next even better. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, just reading and writing is. kind of reading is beyond the scope of what you're interested in is definitely a beneficial practice for sure. And
Yeah.
even despite how annoying it can be at times.
Yeah. Yeah. With business, I mean, a lot of a big lesson in business that most successful people will teach you is that the best way to have a great product is to just build something that you want. Um, I think we've talked about this before. It's the same with writing. Like, you should write things that you want to read. You should build products that you would want to buy. I mean, because you know yourself better than anybody else, and so it's the easiest way to make something like truly good is create something that you love, and odds are there's plenty of people out there that are going to like the same things that you like. And so,
No
and you
matter
having
how
that
niche.
unique, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. We
And
all think we're really unique, but then I've had this realization, like some authors on Substack have come up and they're like just so similar to me. And I'm like, oh, wow. That is,
yeah,
I thought I was the only one that was like this, but you're definitely
yeah,
not, which is good because
yeah,
it means people is going to buy your shit. So
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, we do have things that make us very unique, but there's also so many people out there, like you're going to have overlap of interests and stuff. So like you have to use that to your advantage, whether it's writing things or building products or whatever it might be. I mean, your personalization gives you like a unique perspective on it, but then you can use that as a way to create something that lots of other people are going to relate to or have an interest in as well. Uh, and so when it comes to coming up with business ideas, like, and finding these things that you would want, the only way to do that is by going out there, exposing yourself to new situations, discovering problems or things that you wish were better, and then you can use those ideas to create products or businesses out of them. Uh, and so I think a big overarching theme of whether it's finding your passion or uh, just wanting to expand your scope of the way that you think about things is you just have to go out there and try things. Like and that's the cool part of life is that there's so many different things that you can do and expose yourself to, and you're going to become like a much better, well-rounded person by doing all of that.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Uh, yeah. With all this being said, next time we invite you to Nashville, I don't want to hear any crap about, oh, I don't like click of music.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Well, I know that because I exposed myself to country music and I realized this sucks. So,
No,
but
okay.
yeah. Or, having an open mind, I guess, is another important lesson that we can learn from. Uh, but yeah, I mean, that's the end of my list there. I think there's lots of, for anyone that doesn't know Alex Hormozi, I would suggest checking out his content. Even if you don't agree with a lot of, he has some more controversial ideas that I find interesting. Some I agree with, some I don't, but overall, there's a lot that can be learned from him, I feel like. And I kind of like this format of like just picking out people that we find interesting and that we learn a lot of things from, and then just kind of doing an episode over like some of the lessons that we've learned from them. So I think maybe this format we can kind of repeat with some other people.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for watching, and maybe we'll come back next week with a new person picked out, kind of go over some of their lessons. So yeah, we'll see you then.